as example, where the Netherlands, because we share the Eurozone at this moment with Minister van Dijsselbloem, he had a lot of confidence from the Euro members, and that was one of the reasons why this crisis mechanism was set up in quite a short period of time, because the bigger countries couldn't agree between France and Germany, but the smaller countries can form a compromise. So I think we have to play a very important role, and that is because of our mutual dependency, but not because of our sovereignty. We don't lose sovereignty, but you have to play the game differently. That was one of my remarks which I wanted to share with you. Another point of discussion, at least in the Netherlands, is the so-called subsidiarity. I don't know if you're familiar with that theme. There you are familiar. Very good. Very knowledgeable. And but it's about where do you regulate things on a European level, national level, local level, regional level. And in the Netherlands, this is the very hot topic. I'll come at the end of my speech. I'll come back to that. But if you look at this changing context, you can also see that what are we talking about in Europe? I mean, what is really the hard matter right now? And I'm not talking about the issues, because in fact, I should talk about the issues. Like you already said, it is about migration, it's about security, it is about economic development, it's about labor policy. But that's not what the whole campaign is all about. But people forget that we depend, almost 90% of our legislation is coming from Brussels. Therefore you can see that the European Court of Justice is one of the most important institutions which was decided in the very beginning of the setting up of the European Community. And it still plays the most important role, because, as I said, because of this cross-border cooperation, citizens might feel that they lose control about their own life. But the European Court of Justice is the institution who guarantees all the rights of us in a very equal manner. Whether you come from a bigger or a smaller country, it doesn't play a role at all. So I think there should be more attention for the importance of the European Court of Justice. Another element which strikes me a lot, and I'm really disappointed by that, is that politicians often use Europe as an alibi for bad decisions, and they claim themselves the good decisions, which is really, from a publicity point of view, very bad. I mean, if a hard decision is being made in Brussels and there's some opposition in the Netherlands, politicians say, well, yeah, the Brussels decided upon that, while forgetting that those ministers were part of the decision-making process in the Council of Ministers. So I really don't understand that people do so. And whenever there's a good decision, they claim themselves that they were part of the decision-making process. And in fact, this is it's not just a joke, but I think in the Netherlands, where we have quite an influential Eurosceptical movement, this Eurosceptical movement is feeded by this feeling that bad decisions are being made in Brussels. So if politicians are feeding this feeling, then they are, well, destroying in fact the European campaign for wrong reasons. And I think politicians should pay more attention to educate their own population and to inform them in the right way. As you probably know, we had a European referendum on the European Constitution, and to our big surprise, there was a big no on the European Constitution in the Netherlands, and that was a wake-up call for all politicians. I won't go into details because you're very knowledgeable, so you know that history probably. But what strikes me is that we didn't learn our lesson, and we are still having a sort of negative campaign about Europe, and I really don't understand it. But it also brings us diversity, and that's also a confusing theme, because I think that diversity is the richness of Europe. we are not losing our identity, but we get another identity with our own identity. I mean, you're still feeling Bulgarian, but you now still also feel European. At least it applies for me that I feel very much Dutch, but I also feel European. And I hope you share that feeling with me. But on the other hand, I think on a more critical note, Bulgaria has now been member for, what is it, more than 10 years, member of the European Union. But I think you're still too... The 10 years NATO, 8 years EU. But still, I think Bulgarian politicians are still too modest. I think you have a right to be very vocal in the European Union. And if I look at, for example, reports of the Council of Ministers, I never see a Bulgarian minister coming up for and speaking out for Bulgarian interests. Of course, they are active and behind the scenes, and often that's more efficient than being very vocal in the Council of Ministers. But I think modesty, I like the competence of being modest. But sometimes you need to speak out, and I invite the ministers who I speak, with whom I speak, I invite them to be more vocal on their own interests, because it's about your own interest. And as I said in the beginning, you can influence the decision-making process by making your point. And again, I think that Bulgaria could be more influential if we have the right strategy, if we have the right approach, and if you find the right partners. Maybe to end up, I think what we see today is that the whole environment is changing. We took our security for granted. But the Ukraine crisis was a wake-up call that you cannot just relax, and you have to maintain your bilateral relations, and you have to be prepared for surprises. But I think we can trust that within the EU and among EU member states, you can rely upon each other. And the last 50 years has shown that the EU was a big success, only from the part of freedom and security, but also, of course, on the economic level. And I think the enlargement of the EU is part of that process. I think being part of a member of the EU family, it shows that you're so much interlinked that there's no risk of any security and threat, and that the interests are so interlinked that you can only benefit from it, and that you reduce any kind of risk. That also means that you have to accept that you can expect some criticism if you're not acting according to the rule. Of course, Bulgaria also gets some criticism about Schengen, and I don't want to go into the Schengen. Maybe you have some questions about that, that's another thing. But in my introduction, I don't want to speak about it, but I think it is an example that every member state can expect criticism if you're not acting according to the rules. And we are also part of it. I mean, we can get a lot of criticism on certain fields where we are not acting according to the rule. And I think that's an enormous value of the EU, because we should apply the rules, and we should abide to the norms, and that's our strength. There was a Dutch writer who said, talking about security and freedom, that the EU is a federation upside down. It was Geert Mak who said that. And what he meant was that he was a little bit, he's also a European supporter, but he is surprised that what should be regulated at a national level or local level is regulated on a European level, and what should be regulated on a European level is regulated on a national level. And he had in mind that, for example, the European defense policy and the energy policy. And I think he has a point, although I don't like the whole context in which he is saying, but I think he has a point that European defense policy is an area which we should develop within the EU much more, and the Ukraine crisis has shown this. Because we, in fact, still depend too much on the US, and we are not, because we lack a European defense policy. And the energy, another very difficult subject, is actually it's the same. There is no European energy policy at the moment, while there is an enormous need. And what he meant, and that's the part I don't like, is that he says, well, Europe is too much involved in details, how long a banana should be or whatever. Maybe he has a point there, but it's actually, that's the heart of the debate in the Netherlands. And my own minister, and I hope that there's not too much press here, said that Europe has grown too big in small things and too small on big things. And maybe he's right as well. Of course he's right, because he's my minister, but it is the heart of the debate of the European campaign, and it reflects a sort of hesitation about Europe, and that's the part I don't like, because I think everything what you can regulate on the European level should be done on the European level, because you get only stronger from that. So these were my introductory thoughts. I'm happy to answer your question. I hope you have a lot of questions. I'm in the hands of your chair, Professor, how long we can continue, but I'm here, I'm ready to answer all your questions, and I think you have chosen the right studies, as was quite clear from my introduction, I hope, and I hope you will find your future in Europe, because I think this is the goal that we all have, to work for a stronger Europe. And it all starts with good education and with a good university diploma. Thank you very much.